So Janet just asked a really good question in the comment section. When do you know when how do you know when it's time to contact a deceased loved one? And the answer really is you don't. But I think there's some guidelines. Like, let's say if it's a celebrity. I personally, as a reader on YouTube, wouldn't go out within an hour or day and make huge statements about their death, how they're feeling, or whatever, because the family may not know and may not be ready for the information. And what if they come across it? I mean, it's very disrespectful. The spirit, if they don't want you to know, they're not going to tell you. So it's not even worth your time. And yeah, it's disrespectful. I'll say Matthew Perry for an example. And now that they've released a cause of death, I feel like I can say this now. When he died, the first thing I thought was, and I even said this to someone, Jim Morrison. I thought, oh, it's like Jim Morrison dying in his bathtub in France. Probably wasn't on drugs, but had been before and had had major addictions and, eating and drinking, and his heart gave out. Just as simple as that. Doesn't mean that at the time he was drinking, it was a complete, or using drugs, it was a complete freak of nature accident, unfortunate thing. But I felt like, well, I'm not going to go on YouTube and say this because one, it's just none of my business. And so, yeah, there's like a respect thing. So I would say for a celebrity, talking about a celebrity on YouTube, probably give it at least a couple days, maybe a week. It's not even about the spirit. It's not about Matthew Perry or whoever the celebrity of the day who passes away. It's about, because they're not going to tell you unless they're ready to, it's about the living people who love them, fans. It's about that. And yeah, you're just from a logistic thing or whatever technical thing, they're not going to give you information until they're ready to give it to you. So now as far as like family members who pass away, that's somebody's going to ask you. And so by the time somebody asks you, they've done a certain amount of grieving and they're ready to hear information. And once again, the spirit's not going to tell you unless they want you to know. You may not get anything. But a lot of times by that time, things have healed and it's time. It's ready. They're ready to talk because their family or friend is ready to hear. That's really what it's about. I mean, you could ask the second after somebody dies and they're on the other side or looking over their body or what have you, and they could talk to you. They just don't have a body anymore. They could talk. But it's about the maturity of the acceptance of death, which is traumatic no matter what. Death is traumatic. It's a huge shift. And it's about the family or friends who are ready to hear. So I always try to give that respect. And then there are family members who you could talk to that very day and they're ready to talk. Again, it's really about who wants to hear, who's ready to hear, not about the person who's passed over. The person who passed over, like my mother, when she died of cancer, she had been visiting the other side a lot, I think. And so I felt like she was really happy to be out of her body and had been preparing and sleep, her higher self. She was ready to go. She even told me so many times, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go. And right after she died, I went outside on the terrace at the hospice. And it's traumatic. Hospice can be, it was such a beautiful, like the air, the energy was like you could feel the vortex of lift. It was very light, healing, beautiful, angelic energy in hospice, but also depressing because you're watching your loved one pass away and you have to say goodbye and all that acceptance and letting go, and it's just, and seeing them suffer in any way, or it's just, death is traumatic. But she was ready, and I felt like she really spiritually left her body almost completely before she was physically dead the day before, and I saw her in spirit and my psychic eye run to her mother and father in the room who were standing there in their like 1940s clothing. My grandfather had like a suit on and a hat, and my grandmother had like one of those 1940s dresses with the like bobby socks and shoes or heels or whatever. And my mother was a little girl with red curls and ran to them and ran into their arms and they hugged. It was like this reunion. I saw that in my psychic eye. But she didn't physically die till the next day. Anyway, so when she died the next day, and Spirit told me she would die on that day, technically, physically. And afterwards I cried. And then went out on the terrace. And I saw an eagle. No, it was an owl. An owl was flying over the field. And then this plane showed up, this yellow plane, and started to fly back and forth over hospice. And my sister came out and we were both like, what the? And my sister said later on that same plane flew over her backyard. Later in like a whole other area of town, miles away. My mother was ready to go. Her spirit was ready to go and probably ready to talk. And I did talk to a medium probably about a month or so later, and my mother was ready to talk to me. So it's really up to the person. They can do a lot of soul healing and acceptance of death, burning up their karma through sickness, pain, whatever, getting through it real fast so that because they're ready to go. So they're ready to talk. It's the family members who need time. That's really what it's about. So yeah, the answer to the question of when is the right time to talk to a deceased loved one. It could be the second after they go. It's really up to their soul and spirit if they're ready. But for celebrities, I would wait. And for family members, wait until someone's ready to hear what that spirit has to say. Because there's the grief process they have to get through and the acceptance of death and all that. The spirit mind has probably already accepted everything. It's the living who have to be ready to hear. So that's my answer. And thanks for asking. And if anyone has any other questions, I would love to answer on my channel. Thanks.